What is up, guys? So today we're going to talk about disturbing things, and I'm just going to talk off the top of my head about some of the crazy disturbing things that I saw when I was a heroin addict, especially through the 90s with people injecting, and I'm going to talk about like serial killers and just disturbing videos and documentaries, and ones that I find interesting and ones that I don't, because I love all type of disturbing stuff. Only things that I don't like watching is like paedophile stuff and cannibalism. I'm not really into that sort of stuff. But all the other stuff, serial killers and that, and it just is fascinating to me. And the reason why is because I can't imagine doing that, like people think, oh, he watches all this disturbing stuff, there must be something wrong with him. But it's not like that. I watch all this stuff because I'm totally the opposite of that. And I can't imagine, like if I hurt a woman, say in a car crash by accident, and a woman's died, I wouldn't be able to live with myself. It'd eat me alive, I know it would. So when there's people out there like that, I watched one the other day, the Green River Killer, Gary Ridgway, I think his name is. And he just killed like over 50 women. He just used to meet up with them. You couldn't do that now because of all the cameras, but you could back then. And he would just meet up with him, go behind him, get him in chokehold, kill him, and just throw him in a river. That's why they called him the Green River Killer. And he killed like 50 people. And it's like, how can you do that? So that's why I find it fascinating. And I find it fascinating seeing what other people can do to other people. There's nothing more disturbing than life itself. I saw a great quote from Ed Kemper, the co-ed killer, I think his name was, big 7-foot giant, killing people, and he said, when I see a beautiful woman in the street, half of me is wondering what it'd be like dating her, and the other half wonders what her head would look like on a stick. So it's fascinating to me. And I'm no stranger to seeing disturbing things. Like back in the 90s when I was a heroin addict, you all know my story, when people inject, like first time I saw someone using a needle, I used to think, wow, how can you do that? First thing, as soon as you wake up, big green bloody blue pin, I can't remember what colour it was, and the needle would be as big as the bloody arm, and they're sticking it into the femoral artery, which is an artery what goes right down the back of your body. So they just stick it into the groin like 20 times a day. And I couldn't fathom it the first time I saw it. But then when you see it like 20, 30, 40 times a day, you get used to it. And so what they do is, sometimes they'll miss a vein. That's why they've got no legs and no arms, a lot of these drug addicts what use needles. They'll see, if you cook up a heroin hit on a needle, what you have to do is, like now, it's a lot easier. When I was doing it, well, not using needles, but when I was a heroin addict, there was no chemists that gave you the citric acid. There was no chemists that, I think they gave you pins, but they didn't give you citric. They didn't really give you anything. There was only one shop in Doncaster that sold this stuff. So they stopped selling it after a while because they knew it was addicts getting it to use to inject with. So they stopped selling it. So people were using like vinegar and lemon juice, cooking it up in a spoon and whacking it in the veins. And the veins were all rotten and knackered. And the way you cook up a hit is you get a spoon, you get some water, you put your heroin in, you start cooking it up, and then you put the citric acid in that dissolves all the crap what's in it. And like I say, if you haven't got citric, they have to use vinegar, what can make you go blind, and lemon juice. So then they cook it all up, and then they'll put a cigarette filter in it and suck it up, to filter all whatever crap's left, and then they'll put it in a pin, and then they'll bang it in their arm or in the fem. But when they've been doing that for years on end, the veins are all collapsed and the veins are all knackered, so they sat there for hours, like trying to go in the neck, trying to look in the mirror so they can go in the neck, in their arms, in their feet, in their hands, and the veins are just knackered. And so they'll be trying to get themselves, and like 10 minutes will pass and it'll start congealing again, because, if you leave it out for long enough, it just starts going hard. So then, they'll get frustrated because they can't find a vein, and they're rattling from drugs, and then it makes it even more worse because they're panicking, and then they'll either have to throw it away, or I don't know if you can recook it back up, I don't really know. But that's when accidents happen, because they're desperate to get it in and they'll miss the vein. And I've seen people squashing it in, screaming, because they're missing the vein, but they've got to get it in them. And then when they miss the vein, instead of going to the hospital, they'll just leave it, because you can't earn money in the hospital, you can't do drugs in the hospital, so they don't go. So it gets worse and worse, and then it gets infected, and then the bacteria starts eating away at the arm. And I've seen it, man. It's only now looking back I can see how disturbing it was. I seen one guy with his leg off, eating away. There was a prostitute who had a dirty bandage and pulled it back, and you could smell like a cheese smell, and all green, and the bones sticking out. It's like, wow, man, this is like World War II stuff. Like I say, it's a lot more safer now, because I think you could even get foil from the chemist, which would have been a lifesaver for me, because I've always smoked it. I had to nick Milky Bars and for my foil. But yeah, it's a lot safer now. But that's why you see when they've got legs missing and arms missing, because they're not going to get it sorted out, because they know they've got to have it chopped off, and they'll be in the hospital for a while and they can't earn money. So yeah, that's, and then there's in prison. You see violence in prison. I've spent half my life in prison. I was back on the YOs back in the 90s when it was I've never been to a borstal, but borstals were really tough. There's a good movie on YouTube called Scum. If you haven't seen it, go and see it. Brilliant, of great portrayal of the borstal system. I came along just after that. They were still running it as a borstal when I went to Hatfield Open. They were still running it as a borstal, but it wasn't classed as a borstal. It still had the metal trays. It still had waking up at 5 a.m, marching around the yard, doing exercise, calling the screws sir, and so. But it wasn't as violent as a proper borstal. Those places were really, really tough. So yeah, I've seen a lot of violence in there. People getting slashed with double razor blades. People getting red hot water thrown in the face, and all the face swells up, and over nothing as well. And seeing people getting knocked out in a cell, getting their fucking head smashed onto the porcelain toilet, like a wet thumping noise. It's stuff like that one never leaves you. I still have nightmares about that sort of stuff. I had one about 3 or 4 days ago, and it always ends in someone getting battered. And people don't realise, like, this is the sort of things we have to contend with after we've got through the addiction. If you are able to get through the miserable, brutal, 3-month detox, then you've got all the mental health problems, the damage, what you've done over the years, the anxiety, the depression, and it's hard. If someone messages me, if someone's nice to me in a message, I'm like, what are you up to? What are you trying to do? What's your agenda? Why are you trying to screw me over? I can't accept compliments, because it's in that world of addiction, everybody's trying to take what you've got. So I'm no stranger to disturbing stuff, and that's probably why I find it fascinating, enjoy watching this stuff. There's a lot of documentaries out there that are pretty disturbing. One of the most real ones I saw was one called Black Metal Veins, and I'm not recommending you go and watch it, because it's so depressing. It's a real documentary about 5 or 6 heroin addicts and the punk rockers, and it's just showing you their life, people going over. And I've seen that. I remember when a kid went over in the flats and he died right there on the settee, and everyone was just doing drugs around his dead body, because nobody cared enough to go up, because they didn't have phones back then. You would have had to go all the way down the flats, all the way into town, find a phone, ring the ambulance, and then the police come in, the ambulance come in. So nobody cared enough to do that. So he just died right there, and that's the reality of addiction. But yeah, this documentary, Black Metal Veins, I got like 20 minutes in, I couldn't even watch it. It was too depressing. It was horrible. And that's the life I lived. I lived that life, and I couldn't even watch it. But there's movies as well. I like watching disturbing movies. There's a few out there that are just rubbish, and one of them, what I saw, is one called Begotten, which is just absolute bollocks. It's one of those like artsy-fartsy, pretentious little movie, and all the comments were like, oh, so disturbing. I'm like, no, it's not. It's a fucking load of bollocks. I can't even describe what it's about. It's just rubbish, and it's supposed to be like the creation of God and all this. That's a load of rubbish. But there's a good one called, it's on Netflix. I think it's still on there. If you haven't seen it, go and see it, especially if you like disturbing content. And it's called Don't F With Cats. and it's about a guy called Luca Magnotta or something like that, and he's called. He put out a video called "One Maniac, One Ice Pick," which is from another video what 3 guys put out called 3 Guys, One Hammer, and it was about 3 Ukrainian or Russian guys kidnapping a bloke and beating him to death with a hammer. And I watched that, and I wish I'd never watched it. It was one of them, same as that Funky Town Cartel video where they chop that guy's face off and they hook him up to adrenaline so he can't pass out, and he's screaming and you can see his teeth chattering, but he's got no lips. It's like, fucking hell. And I watched this stuff out of morbid curiosity, and then I'm up for a week thinking, why the fuck did I just watch that? But yeah, that's what he was doing. He was doing like one of those videos, and this Luca Magnotta, he got this bloke, and I think he drugged him first, and he videoed it all, and it was called One Maniac, One Ice Pick, and he died, or he knocked him out with his drug and his drink, and then he killed him whilst he was dead, and he was videoing himself just stabbing his body, and he ended up cutting his leg off, and it shows you him cutting bits out of his arse cheeks and that, and then he sent it to the government, like proper nutter, and it shows you in the documentary, I think it's 3 parts, and it shows you how they tracked him down. It was down to the public to do it, because the coppers didn't want to know, and so all the people online, he was posting videos killing cats and stuff, so that's why it's called Don't F With Cats, because all the people was offended that the cat got killed, and so they did the detective work and ended up catching him in another country. He's locked up for it now. So yeah, and there's disturbing movies as well, and when I say disturbing movies, it doesn't have to have like violence and shock value and all that sort of stuff. A great example is The Babadook. That really opened my eyes, and it's a movie. Now it's a boring movie. I went to see it at the cinema, and when I left the cinema I couldn't get it out of my head. I was thinking about it for days, and that's the mark of a good movie, a good disturbing movie. And it's about a woman who she's got this kid, and her husband died on the way to the hospital to deliver this kid. So she's lost her husband, she's a single parent, and the kid is so annoying. He's such a naughty, he's got ADHD and all the behavioural problems. And the kid played a brilliant part. He's so convincing, you know. I felt like jumping in the telly and strangling the little cunt. Because he was breaking everything, and she'd tell him off, and then he'd attack another pupil, she'd tell him off, and then he'd smash a window and attack a girl, and she was just constantly telling him off. And whenever she tried to relax, he'd come charging in, shooting her with bows and stuff. And so it's a tale of a woman battling mental health problems from having a naughty kid, a single parent, and she starts making up a way to justify killing him, and that's where it comes in with the Babadook. She's like imagining that she's found this book from this make-believe guy, the Babadook, who's going to kill her son, and it shows you her battling with herself, you know, her own demons. It's such a great movie, and I can understand if there's some people watching it and think, it's crap, that's boring, because it is a boring movie. But if you've got a good brain, you know, if you're creative and you can like think about it, then it really is a disturbing movie about one woman who's got mental health problems, battling demons and justifying killing her own kid because he's so naughty. And then like I say, it opened up my eyes. I couldn't stop thinking about it, and now I look totally different on single parents when they've got kids with behavioural problems. Yeah, it really an eye-opener for me. But yeah, there's all sorts of disturbing things online with cartel videos. There's the Ghost Rider video where they pour petrol on a guy's head and set it on fire, and it's not as available now because they're just deleting it all. There was one case with a guy who killed his girl. Well, he wasn't even his girlfriend. He was more or less stalking her, and he ended up cutting her throat on video and posting it to her parents. And it just shows you how sick these fucking weirdos are. I'll tell you another one what I saw, what was really interesting, and it was the police. They've gone to this house for a disturbance, and there's a bloke there, and you can see he's a bit out of it, and he's walking around the house, and there's a dead woman on the settee. So they've grabbed this bloke and said, "You fucking killed her." Took him to the interrogation room, and he's got a big black eye, and he's sat there and he's saying, "I don't know what happened." And the coppers doing what they do in America, you know, just grilling him, making him say he's done it. And he's like, "I don't know what you're on about. I don't know what you mean." And then he says, "I got shot in the eye. I don't know what you're on about." And the copper says, "Look, if you'd have been shot in the eye, you'd be dead." And then he started looking at him like, hang on a sec, he has got a black eye. And he started looking after like 2 hours of interrogating him. And then he went out and called another guy in, and he had been shot in the eye. Someone had come in, 2 brothers I think it were, they kicked his door up and then they shot him in the eye. So he's gone down, they thought he was dead. And then they'd killed his girlfriend on the settee. And he was in the interrogation room for 2 hours with a gunshot wound in his eye. And they ended up rushing him to hospital. They couldn't save his eye. He had a brain problem. And he did live. They said if they'd come in like 2 hours earlier, then maybe could have given him a better life. But it was too late. And he did live for, I think it was about 10 years with strokes and, complications. And then he died from another complication. Whereas if the police had took him in straight away, but they're that fixated on making people say they've done it in America. That's what they call a confession. Just make him say he's done it, and then we'll charge him with it, and you get life in prison. They did it with that Brandon Dassey, is it? Brandon Dassey, making a murderer. The retarded kid. They've got this bloke, locked him up for a murder he didn't commit. He's got out 20 years later, and they've got him again and said, oh, well, you've committed this one. And he's saying, I haven't done this one either. And they've got him, and in order to get to him, because I think he was putting a claim in against the town. So in order to get to him, they've gone after his little brother, who was retarded. You could see he wasn't all there, and he was sat in the interview room, and the coppers are saying, oh, you cut her throat, didn't you? And he's going, yes. Didn't know what they're on about, and he's saying, and then tell us about the gun, right? But we need you to say it. You got the gun, didn't you? And he's going, yes. And they've charged him. He's still in there now, him and his brother. And that's, even though most of the population know he probably didn't do it. He didn't do it. He's a little child with, and in the interview he was more concerned about watching WWE WrestleMania that weekend. That's how much of a child he was. And they're saying he's done this horrific murder. And pretty much everybody knows he hasn't done it, but he's still in prison now. It's mental in America. They just make you say that you've done it and then charge you with it. Over here, they do the opposite. They tell you not to say out. Well, look, don't say out. You better get a solicitor, But anyway, I've rambled on. That's the video for today. If you like this video, press the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. Yes, the pat.